and to call your attention to NABO's positioning statement. So all of you have this. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Nicole Martin, the owner of HR Boost, and she will guide you through the rest of this session. Thank you. Nicole, take it over.
Thank you so much, Randy. So how's everybody doing this afternoon? Are you doing good? I'm going to just get moving. How's that sound? So, HR Boost, as you know, we were here last year, and it's my absolute honor to be here again this year and support NABO. As a woman-owned business myself, this is something near and dear that I'm passionate about, sharing best practices and bridging with other women who are working in leadership roles within their businesses. And today's session is no exception. Last year we talked a little bit about why you should hire a millennial, and some of you might have attended that. And it really was focusing on something that I'm passionate about, which is the biggest shift in human capital that you're going to witness in our lifetimes. And some of you are already starting to witness that in your businesses. You might be feeling it, and if you're not, I promise you, you'll be feeling it within the coming 5 years. What we're going to do today is not just focus on that what, right? And that why, because many of you have been hearing it for a number of years. Today we're actually going to do something about the how, right? The how. How are we going to bring people together in our businesses in the coming years? What are we doing right now today in order to bridge the multi-generational, the multicultural, right? What are we doing to bridge boomers to millennials, to Gen Xers, to the open source talent that we come across in order to serve our businesses? And what are we doing to expedite that learning and that transfer? Do any of you have any real life solutions today? And I question how many are really putting those in practice, given our time frame. So when you keep this in mind, please know today's session is meant to be interactive. Why? Because we believe in experiential learning, and I know that all of you are going to take a lot more out of this session as we get involved together. So I hope you guys are ready to play with Dr. J and I. Are you ready? Yay! Okay, good. Little enthusiasm. Good. So what I want to start with is collaboration. How important is collaboration? It's critical. Absolutely. And many of us say that it's critical, and we even, as women, like to think that we side towards being collaborative in our businesses. I would be one to say that I'm highly collaborative, right? And if you asked a woman in her business, is she highly collaborative? Many of us do come from that mindset. But then as you're challenged every day, like Michelle said earlier today when she was saying she was leading her consulting business, right? And she was growing, and she was working, and she was doing all those things. How much does that take you away from your collaborative self as you start to carry the burden, as you start to think of what's on your shoulders, as you start to think it's your responsibility? Do we become less collaborative and not realize it, right? And I believe that this is true, and I believe it's true for any woman in business, whether it's her business or she's serving another as a leader within that business. So as we think of collaboration, we know that it's critical. How critical? There's a study, and I'd be happy to share it with you, and it was done by the Human Capital Institute, which is a big organization here in our country, and they found that collaboration is one of the 5 metrics that actually drives financial performance in your businesses, will actually impact the bottom line, that's net income, ladies, impact your bottom line to the tune of upwards of 17%. Now, how important is collaboration? Really, really important. Are we measuring that? And what are we doing in our businesses today to absolutely make sure that the how, which is how we got from point A to point B, is being executed daily in our businesses? This is why we're here today. So without further ado, what I want to do is welcome Dr. J. Say hi to everyone, Dr. J.
Hi, everyone.
I have the pleasure of working with Dr. J, knowing Dr. J, and he's somebody who absolutely owns crowdsourced coaching techniques. And we're going to actually move through this today, ladies. We're going to understand this process, and we hope to give you some real takeaways that you'll be able to implement starting tomorrow in your businesses if you so choose. Okay? So what I want to do is start and get your mind in the right place. And we're going to just do some critical questions for yourself. So just think, as leaders in your business, and putting leadership into context, everyone has the opportunity to be a leader. It doesn't just mean the CEO of the business. It doesn't just mean the head of a division, right? What are we doing today to make sure that every single person in our business has that persona of a leader? And that they know they have the opportunity to live the values, model the values, that enforce our cultural norms, that make it so that we live who we say we are. What are we doing to do that, right? So as you think about that what if, and I think of the word leader again, and I pose it to you again, as a leader in your business, what if you could get better results today through engaging people through real conversations? Would that interest you? Yes. Thank you, Randy. That would interest you, right? And why is it important to have real conversations? Many people are all about communication, communication, communication. Okay, yes, 98% of what I do and solve on a daily basis has to do with communication.
Because they learn what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And grow their business based on what your customers want.
Right, so gathering, listening, that's a listening quality you're speaking to, and that's very important. I would definitely concur with that statement. But I think it's really important when you think of the real conversations. Many of us sometimes are just thinking that we get up, we speak, we share. We make sure that everybody understands what our monthly status is, what objectives we hit. We make sure that we have maybe town hall meetings or newsletters or communications, right? That's communication, ladies. Gentlemen, that's not real conversation, right? And real conversation is what's really important. Next, I want to ask you, what if you could get better results through conversation in order to address the immediate issues that you're facing today? If you were to think of the side commentary and thought that brought you here today, and maybe the thoughts that enter your mind that cause you stress, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm at a conference all day and I really need to be addressing X, Y, and Z back in my business. When you think about that, what would those concerns be? What if you could really get better results today even to address those pressing concerns on your mind? Would that interest you? Absolutely. There's a little bit more vibration in this room. That was good, ladies. Okay. What if, instead of just us brainstorming and thinking of how to solve a problem, we absolutely could reach out to the collective group and get a more creative and innovative solution on how we're approaching something? Would that benefit you? Yes. Wonderful. And lastly, what if you could take your approach to how we're actually working in our collaborative way, right? How we're looking outward to the person across from us. What if we could actually do a better job and refine our approach, improve our approach, become even more collaborative over time, more trusting, more open, more just comfortable in our vulnerability? Would that interest you as a leader? Would that benefit you? Yes? Good. So now that we're all on the same page, I want to go back and I want you to think about what are the most pressing issues and concerns? What are the things that you're carrying on your shoulders right now that really are a concern for you in your business? That you feel alone on? That you don't know where to go? You feel stuck? What are your pain points? I want you to think about those, and then when you're comfortable, I'd like you to put your hand out and I'd like you to share it.
And maybe I can walk around with
Yeah,
the mic.
Jay. Jay can go around.
I'm going
That'd
to
be
go
great.
around with the mic so that we can capture that. So, yes.
I'll stand up. Okay, so my biggest concerns right now, it's a new one. I have an HR concern. I have an employee who just wants to coast. I can't coast if people are wanting to coast. You can't grow if people are wanting to coast. And also consistent billing. Just making sure that my biller's getting their work done so we can get it to the client to bring in the money so we can do the work we're doing.
It's good. It's good. Thank you, Dory.
I have a really great staff who communicates well with each other, but they don't know the right things to communicate with me and how to communicate well with me on an ongoing basis, not just one for.
That's a wonderful pain point. Thank you for sharing that. Very interesting. Gail?
I work as a consultant, and a lot of my clients are having the same problem, which is speed is the new barrier to success. We all have to work so much faster,
Yes.
which makes it really hard to have time to collaborate.
Yes.
And so we have to jam through a solution, and you don't have time to make sure it's the right one.
Wonderful. Thank you for that point. Anyone else have their pressing needs Any commonalities? Think of the headlines. Gabriella?
I see a lot, as a consultant, I see a lot in my clients, the clash of generations and the styles of doing things, so that gets in the way a lot. Because you, on one side, you want to retain knowledge and experience, on the other hand, you have this new generation coming through, wanting to do things differently, and there's a lot of friction that comes from that.
It's interesting. So we have some generational pockets. Elizabeth?
Sorry.
No, it's wonderful.
So my pressing concern is I have, it's going to sound weird, an amazing employee who gets great feedback from all of our clients, but she's so chatty that our productivity decreases because she's so much on the phone talking and her conversations are way too long.
Okay, that's interesting. It's a good one. Thank you. Anybody else want to share their pressing need, their pain point right now that they're thinking of? Yes.
I'm a consultant also, and built my business with all contractors. So my team consists of 7 independent contractors, and one of the biggest challenges I have is keeping them engaged enough so that they stay interested in the business and are available when new contracts come in. Okay. So I have peaks and valleys with the assignments, and during those valleys, they might be transitioning to other activities, and then when I do get the contract, I may have a challenge filling it.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have a couple different headlines that came up, right, when you think of the topics that were just put forth. So when you think about it, I think what we should do is we need to hone in on one that everybody would like to maybe kind of think about, that maybe, yeah, that was me too. Or, yeah, that's something I could definitely cite and say that I faced that also. So when you think about generational issues, which was Gabriella's, correct? How many, by a show of hands, think that that's something that's a pressing issue for them? Hi, so I can see you. Okay, maybe 4 of you. Okay. When it was Dory and she was talking about employees that just come to work every day and coast, and you're wanting them to do more, excel, be ambitious, perhaps, get motivated, right? I think
that's a little bit of the engaged as well.
Yeah.
And it's generational.
Interesting. So there's a commonality. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. And do you see commonalities then maybe to also Elizabeth when she was saying someone was chatty and social? And the time that they're spending on the phone. Do you think that's a generational impact, Elizabeth, or do you think that was something that's much more just about the individual?
More about the individual.
Okay, interesting.
Sometimes when people like to work together also, that
Mm-hmm.
problem. I have that problem because my staff is very excited.
Okay.
Have a bunch together and then
Okay. So we have a number of different, pressing concerns that you guys have shared. I don't know if you guys caught that over here. Right. So what we want to do now, because we have a shortened time frame, is really give you the opportunity to experience, right? For those of you that shared your pressing issue, and those of you that feel and said that you would gain, right, you'd get better results from bridging to the collective knowledge in a group of other leaders, and that you felt you'd get better results. Right now, we have the opportunity for someone to step forth and to say, yes, I would like to take advantage of that opportunity. And we're going to have a live demonstration where Dr. J, who's been working for years, this is his specialty. He literally travels the globe, I think most recently back from Israel. And businesses actually demand that he come in and help facilitate people to actually have real conversations, to find creative and innovative solutions, to address their immediate concerns, and refine their approaches for better outcomes. This is what Dr. J does.
And in 20 minutes or less, we're going to walk through a process and hopefully have somebody walk away with some light bulbs, because it's not just going to be me, it's going to be the crowd generating how to better understand the issue, as well as what to best consider to do about it. One caveat is that it's important that the person who comes up realizes we're recording. And so the person would have to not mind being recorded. But within that frame, we really encourage somebody to step up and take advantage of this opportunity. You want to come up? All right.
Wonderful.
Is this mic still working? Can you hear me all from the mic? Okay.
Wonderful. Okay, so welcome, Nicole, Julie Savitt, and I think we've spoken on the phone, darling. I think it was WBDEC stuff. I think it was women's certification stuff. So nice to see you. So I'm going to hand this microphone to you.
Thank you.
And you.
So please come on up.
Okay.
And your name is Julie.
Yes, it is.
Hi, I've not met Julie before. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So there's a general process that I like to work through when I'm working with somebody in a group in a crowdsourced coaching process. So we'll spend just a few moments gaining context, and then I'm going to put the group to work right away. Because the knowledge in the group is much more than you and I have alone.
Okay.
Okay? So in 15 or 20 minutes, Julie, if I could wave my magic pen and you could get the absolute best outcome that you wanted from our talk together, what would you want to achieve? And put the mic close enough.
Okay. So I would like to know how to manage my staff better so that the communication is, to me, from my staff, is more effective and successful.
Okay. And would we define communication as two-way, as you to your staff and them to you, or are you more concerned about them keeping you in the loop and informing you?
I'm more concerned about them keeping me in the loop, but I would surmise that maybe my communication isn't perfect and I'm not maybe asking, even though I think I am, for what I want from them.
Good. So in a few moments or less, how would you write a caption that describes the nature of the communication problem today?
What is the right thing that needs to be communicated?
Okay.
What is the right thing that needs to be communicated?
So there's a lot of information that either comes forth or doesn't.
Right.
And that you're left either with too much clutter, that you really don't know how to get your arms around what you're hearing. And then I'm also hearing you say that many issues you think may not be getting communicated.
Exactly. And it's very hard for me to get my staff to realize that when I ask them a question or outreach to them with a task, that they need to come back and follow up with me. For some reason, they'll do it only if I follow up with them, even after I have said many times, you know, if I outreach to you with a problem or a task or a question, I expect you not only to take care of it, but to communicate with me in follow-up. And that's where it seems to be it's not consistent, and I am always going back to the same thing of pressuring them to give me information.
Okay. With just that little bit of information, first of all, how many staff are we talking about here?
Okay. I have 16 employees, but 5 of them actually work in the office. So I would love my drivers who are not in the office to communicate better with the people in the office that they need to communicate with, and the people in the office to be able to keep me in the loop, because my job isn't to be in the office, but I need to know what's going on in my business.
Okay. So I'm going to turn to the group a moment, and I'm going to ask Nicole to just engage everyone so we can all hear. What are you hearing? What do you need to know? What do you think of the dynamics? And we're not being disrespectful to Julie if we make guesses, because Julie can confirm or not, and we'll just keep it to, you know, because of the time involved, just what you think some of the issues are that you're hearing.
I think your employees aren't knowing what's expected of them, and you're not giving them the information that they need to know so you can get the information you need.
So one issue that you're saying is clarity around the expectation.
Right. So you need to define what you need to know and in what order you need to receive it. and deadlines clarified, so you get the information you need and they're giving you only the information you need, and finding out if they have questions about other aspects where they can go. So you can streamline some of that for you.
Okay, other thoughts? Lots of hands in the room.
It sounds like you may also have a trust issue in the sense that your employees feel like you should trust them and they shouldn't need to report back to you, and yet you feel like you need them to report back to you when you're not in the office, and they feel like, well, she gave us the ball, we're running with it, we're doing our job. So there's probably a trust issue.
And I'm also hearing, along with trust, possibly a little bit of misalignment.
Yeah.
What the employees expect and what Julie expects.
Yeah.
Okay?
I also think you're making promises on behalf of your business, and you need other people to support that, and they don't even know that they're part of this promise.
Okay, so you're bringing in a rather, what she's saying is that, if I heard her correctly, that there's some feelings that you have about what's on your shoulders, and that you're putting that responsibility on you when in fact it may be a shared responsibility, and it could translate into promises you make to customers or other expectations you might have that are your burden, that if they were part of that. Is that in line with what you were saying?
Yes, I think they don't know what promise they're a part of making. Like, they don't understand what you need from them to be able to keep a promise with a customer. It's more than just their responsibilities. It's also what the business is promising.
Okay.
And the next one is anything written down? Because if it's not written down, it doesn't exist.
Okay, so are the expectations clearly laid out? Yeah.
And I don't know if it's appropriate to ask a question, but I'm wondering if, in fact, the information flow that you have difficulty getting back, is it related to difficult obstacles or challenges in the business, or do you still have that challenge when there's good news coming back to you? Or does it come only primarily with difficult news?
Okay, so boy, that's really loaded with about 20 things all at once. It's the culture of, no, don't apologize. You're adding some wonderful depth and value, and this is the benefit of this. So you're really thinking about culture. If I may describe it that way, where is it that that Julie is only interested in problems and information that's more related to negative things?
No, I'm wondering if there's resistance to sharing difficult information.
Right,
if it's
right.
more difficult to share challenging information or information that may not be great news versus the information, are you more readily getting good news back?
And I'm relegating that to understanding the culture and the management style and how employees get encouraged or discouraged from information flow. Does that make sense? Yeah.
We're head to Linda.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to come back to you and see which ones of these make sense. Okay?
Somebody mentioned clarity, but I'm wondering if you ever ask if your message has been delivered, if their understanding is the same as your understanding, getting verification about that. And the other thing is, I've been in that similar position, and I found out that some of it is personal with me, and I'm wondering if you're bringing some of that to the reaction you're getting.
So you're bringing into how does the perceptions about information flow into the label or value or meaning she places on that lack of communication, and is her personal reaction getting in the way of the process? Okay?
Yes, thank you, Linda. Okay.
My question is, because it sounds like the problem's only the 5 people in the office. The other employees seem to be doing the right communication. So in that group of 5 that work in the office, are any of them friends or family? Because it really sounds like a parent-child relationship.
Okay, and again, these are just guesses. She was saying, is it just in the office, or is it relating to the people that are outside the office? I heard you say you also wanted to improve the communication flow between the outside and the inside. Just a couple more, for lack of time,
Have
one or
my
two more
eyes on
comments.
2 more.
All right.
Hi, I'm just curious as to how often you get your team together to communicate. So if it's a weekly meeting or Monday morning.
Okay, so the frequency of meetings where you can get to these issues.
And I just want to suggest something related to even taking a step back is when anybody even comes in, before there's a project or something that needs to be reporting on, has it been established and agreed upon, most importantly, on what the expectations are in terms of frequency of anything? You know, when they should communicate. Is it bad? Is it when there's bad news or good news, or any time, or once a week, once a day anyway, via email, in person, telephone? Has that, you know, been established? Because I find that having a clear agreement beforehand, before there is even a thing to disagree on, helps a lot in anything you do afterwards.
Okay, so you don't have to answer each one of those. Okay, what would be of value is, based on what you've heard, is there anything that strikes you that is on track or that adds value to the problem you've raised?
So I believe, first of all, I do meet with my staff every week. I also do one-on-ones. I have outlined my expectations. As far as I do want to know about good and bad, because I do reward wins for all of my people, my drivers and my staff in the office. I think that one of my problems that nobody mentioned is that I have the most problem with laborers that have become office staff, and they just, I think, don't know how to communicate very well, so we've been working on ways to communicate. And I think it's just not in their DNA because of what their past life is and what they're doing now. I also have put a lot of responsibility and made teams, and it seems like their communication and problem solving between each other has become so good that they've kind of felt there's no need for me. And I am proud of my staff and my employees, but even though I'm not in the office as much, and especially I was out for personal reasons for a while, I need to be in touch with what's going on. And I have tried in many ways to communicate what my expectations are. It happens for a little bit sometimes, and then they lose it again. So it's keeping consistency.
Okay, so we're generating some suggestions. The comment from the audience was to put one person in charge. There's one other aspect that strikes me as I'm listening to you, Julie, and let me add another perspective. It feels like, as the leader, that you're putting the burden of all of this on your shoulders, that it's almost a problem of communication of you versus them, and how that you can solve this problem. What do you think of that observation?
I think it could be the way that I'm communicating with them. I have given them responsibility, and I have put, it in their hands that they could take and problem solve. But it doesn't negate the fact that I need to be part of what's going on in my business.
So have you shared your problem and asked your staff to help you with a solution?
Yes, and that's where the problem comes in, is that they're not communicating the things that I really feel are important, even though I've communicated to them what I feel is important.
Okay, but have you shared that it's not fixed yet?
No, I've been out for the past month for personal.
Okay, so you've talked through and set an expectation. Yes. You've asked them to help you. How did that work? And sometimes we can get, how much more time do we have? Okay, 10 minutes? Very good. 8 minutes. All right, so give me an example. How did that communication go? Sometimes we can learn a lot by getting into a specific example. That when we talk about the situation very generally, it's different. So could you describe how that meeting went?
So we sat down at the table and we talked about what are right things to communicate. What are the right things that I need to communicate?
How did you frame it before you got into the trenches of that? How did you start the meeting?
Well, we talked first about teams, how it's natural that there's certain teams that work together in the daily process, and we identified those teams. Actually, my staff identified those teams, and I agreed with them. And then we talked about what my expectation was for each of those groups, what they would be dealing with, who was kind of responsible for each of those areas, and what I expected as far as the communication from them for each of those teams. And then we talked about how we were going to communicate. And then we talked about what I felt was important that I wanted communicated to me, and what I asked them what they felt was important that they wanted communicated from me. So I thought I was doing all the right things, and we even have it written down, like what those expectations are. But it seems like it gets forgotten. And I don't want to go back and say, so what happened with, Or I heard there was a problem yesterday through the grapevine. I really wanted to hear it when it was happening, because it was something that I probably could have been very helpful in the problem-solving process. And so I don't know how to keep this consistency and for them to keep remembering what's the right things to communicate.
So just again, for lack of time, typically we may go an hour in unbundling this problem, and we only have 15, 20 minutes. So what I'm hearing you say now as the point of honing in is, how do I gain the consistency, and how do I follow up with the group to ensure that they're following through with what I need?
And we're all on the same page.
And you're all on the same page.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I'm going to go back to the group and ask for suggestions of what Julie can do to think about that particular issue.
We're going to head back to Gabriella.
So my suggestion would be, from the example you gave, it sounds to me like you're communicating what your expectations are, but at no point you're really getting anything back from them or getting really an agreement. Maybe they think that what you're asking for is completely unreasonable, maybe. They won't say anything to you. They will comply for a few weeks, and then they're going to forget about it because they haven't bought into it, really. They're not truly engaged.
So there's an issue of alignment and true
Exactly.
buy-in.
It became kind of one way. It sounds to me like it became very one way. You have your things, you're making it very clear, but at no point you stop to ask if that even makes sense. Get them to say, here's the problem with this that you're asking us. It gets in the way of that. Here's the way I would think it's more efficient to do this. It became very one way, so you get it for a couple weeks, and then the moment they cannot give it to you anymore, they won't, because they haven't bought into it.
So to buy into it, how do you agree with it or don't you? What is the best way to deliver this information, and how can you ensure among yourselves follow through?
Exactly. It's understanding the impact of that requirement on the team. And it doesn't mean, it's not that I'm saying, oh, just democracy, just ask everybody, nobody's wants to do. It's not that. But it's understanding what the impact of a requirement is, because maybe you can tweak your requirement and get everybody happy to comply. Otherwise, you just get people going through the motions, and as soon as they can let it go, they will.
The lack of follow-through suggests that some of that hasn't been nailed down. Okay, another comment over here.
Yes, we're coming around.
I speak from having gone through this with a boss in the past, with the lack of communication and really understanding, and I had my priorities and he had his. So something that I did was I made a list of the priorities with red as the top and yellow as kind of what I perceived as the middle, and on the bottom was like gray. And these were all the things I knew I was supposed to take care of in my job. Also, we didn't have a job description written down, so I would say, do you have job descriptions? Yeah. Great, awesome. So they have what they should be doing. So then, anyway, I took them to him and I said, here's what I perceive as to be my top priority things that I have to accomplish, and X, all the way down. And I was like, would you return this to me with what you perceive? Because at that time, everything was red, and so I was getting done what I thought was the best, and was frustrated that he wasn't with me, and it was the same thing with both ways.
So what I hear you suggesting to Julie is that she do some prioritization of their tasks so that they see where this is, and if Julie feels that this is more important, than some of the other tasks that they're doing, she could ask them to reprioritize to raise that higher up on their list.
Sure, and then at the end of the week, go through it with them and saying, okay, here's what you accomplished. Why did you only accomplish, why did you have 4 in the yellow and only 1 in the red in the task done?
It seems like one of their standard responses is, we took care of it, we didn't want to bother you. That's, it was all taken care of, everything is fine.
So it really begs the question, does Julie really need to know? Is she knowing for the right reasons, or is she knowing as a point of security in herself? This is what we call a gold mine. What did my question do for you?
No, that's interesting, but I think like if one of my vehicles gets in an accident, that's something I should know. If I don't micromanage at all, and that's why we do teams. And and I do have a team leader. There's one person in the office that seems to be the go-to, and she's a great communicator, and I don't have this problem with her.
So one other issue might be for Julie to consider prioritizing what kind of information is critical to communicate, even if it got taken care of. That's another thought.
That's the thing, yeah.
Okay, how are we doing with time? Okay, so one more comment in the back, and then we'll...
Good, where am I headed? Oh, okay.
Hi, Julie. You said to us that it seems that the biggest problem is with people who have shifted roles from being a laborers into the office. It seems to me that maybe a communications course for those people to sort of explain to them more explicitly the culture and how you want them to communicate may be helpful.
Those are great ideas, and so I'm going to ask you in a very broad brush way, are you taking away some things to consider from our discussion today?
Absolutely, and I think the last suggestion is a great idea. Because these are people that are used to working with their hands and laboring, and now they're in the office and have more administrative and decision-making responsibilities. And I don't know if they really know how to do that, even though they're performing their jobs very well, and they are taking care of things, in not mostly a good way.
And they may be task-focused and not think of process.
Exactly.
Okay, so one last question before we get into explaining crowdsourced coaching, just for 2 or 3 minutes. When somebody volunteers like this to be up front, I'd like to hear from the audience, and this would not be about more suggestions for Julie, but how has Julie being up here helped you? What are you learning? What light bulbs have gone on for you that Julie has helped you with?
Yes?
I thought the whole conversation about buy-in was really interesting, and I think it's easy as a leader to get task-focused when really what you want is process-focused, and you kind of try and have that fill in, and it never feels like the right fit, and that was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. There was another hand back here.
Yes, absolutely, Gabriella.
It's a problem. I'm super shy. What I got was that it's so interesting to watch when, we think that we have it, most of the time, we think we have it all figured out, right? There's nothing else that anyone could add, kind of, I'm exaggerating. And then it's really fun to watch how, and that, so for me, it was a motivator of, I don't need to do it alone, I can go ask people.
Perfect. Another hand over here.
Music to my ears.
I was just going to comment that I thought it was courageous, and it's clear how open you are to finding solutions for your organization. So I applaud that, because I think your team is probably very fortunate to have somebody who's willing to listen and to engage in that way.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Any other last observations, comments? If not, Julie, thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie.
And we can talk further if you want to. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. So now that you've witnessed kind of a crowdsourced coaching exchange, and you got to feel what that was like in a bigger kind of collective group. Some of you may be thinking, what is this crowdsourced coaching stuff and where did it come from, right? And some of you might find it really interesting because it actually came from an education model. And so when you think of an education model, it absolutely assumes that each of us have the ability to learn. And each of us have experiences and expertise to be able to share and advance the knowledge of somebody else, right? That's the education model. And so when you think of that education model, some of you might have heard of Alfred Adler, right? Local individual. And Alfred Adler actually had founded a family institute, a guidance institute. And what he did is he took this example and took a demonstration family, right? An individual family unit that was experiencing something traumatic, let's say, that they were dealing with, that they had experienced, that they had coped through, and he put them on a stage and then invited people, other families that were maybe dealing with the same pressing matter, right? And then the demonstration family would share, and the collective audience of the families that were facing this or coming to it would also interact the way, similarly like you just did. And what they learned is that that brought about real conversations. It basically expedited the trust, the credibility of it, right? The openness, the effectiveness, and the message, which is, I didn't tell you the message. You felt it, right? You absolutely probably walked away and felt it as we were experiencing that back and forth. And that is the model. That's where this comes from. And when you think of that model, and it's applied in business now, from the family, and you take it to the boardroom, you take it back to the team, you take it to your business, think of maybe how not collaborative we're being on a daily basis. And when you think about your team, your environment, how safe do people feel to absolutely speak up, to ask the question, to pose how they feel in a comfortable, safe environment? And imagine if you took this approach back to your business and you applied it, and we'll talk about some applications in a minute, but imagine the shared learning that could take place. Imagine the speed at which you could expedite the learning in your business across divisions of business, silos of business, whatever it is, and engaging them in those real conversations. What does that do for your business? It builds capabilities, and it builds trust, the number one broken thing in business today. And when you have trust, and when you engage people in real conversations and you involve them, how loyal are they to your team and to your business? How did you engage the passion in their heart that they had something to do with that? They were part of that solution? This is how you start to bridge collaboration in your environment. So what I'm going to do is hand it over to Dr. J.
Thank you. Now, there are certain reasons why people are reluctant to involve in this model. People sometimes function on the vertical plane. They think that they're solely responsible. The burden is on their shoulders. It's not uncommon for a leader to think that he or she is the one responsible, and that person has to make the decisions. And sometimes other people feel that they have to be in control, or they have such high standards for themselves. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I say a suggestion that would embarrass me, or people might laugh at, or really think is off base? And so we tend to have people function vertically in silos, or they think it's not my responsibility, I have my own work to do, right? I want to tell you a quick story of a centipede, ugly bug, but this one's a cute one, right? All 100 legs are beautifully walking along and flowing, and he came across a beetle, and he stopped, and all the legs came to attention. And the beetle said, "My, I so admire the way you move. But tell me, does your 57-foot move before or after your 56-foot?" And the centipede starved to death. He became so busy watching his own feet, he could no longer move. And very often, the culture of an organization is that way. Either it's not my responsibility, or what if I say the wrong thing, or my peer's going to be upset with me? What if I tell my peer I think he or she is not doing something well or not effectively enough? I'm going to be ostracized. I'm going to be pushed to the side. We'll have this conflict. And so people tend to stay in their silos either because of the outcomes that they fear or their own personal goals of not looking bad, of not being perfect enough, of saying the wrong thing. And this is the culture and the environment that we work in often. And the horizontal plane is just the opposite. The real goal is to forget myself and to recognize I'm imperfect and I'm not going to always make the same mistakes. I love the lunchtime speaker. She said, find her own style and approach and live it. Those are my words, not hers, but it's so important that people can function in a way. Of course, the culture needs to be there. Nicole talked a great deal about creating a right environment for employee human capital to really make the most sense and to work most effectively, but where we can get people to function horizontally and collaboratively and take shared responsibility for outcomes in each other's development. I can't tell you how many development plans are shared with colleagues. It's typically a process between the manager and the employee has these goals, and no one else knows what the employee is working on, right? How silly is that? A horizontal plane and a working together means that everybody should take responsibility for everyone else's development. I ought to know what you're developing. Maybe it's a strength of mine, and maybe I can lend support if I'm aware of it. But there are so many processes within an organization that silo people and lead to this siloed approach when we cut off the opportunity for people to really collaborate and share towards optimal outcomes.
Okay, thank you, Jay.
Yes.
So what I want to do right now is kind of take this back home for you, right? Which is, what does this mean for me in my business? How does this apply back to my business? And how can I take what I experienced today and potentially use it tomorrow? Right? That's the goal, some takeaways. And one of the first things that I want to talk about are some of the different varied ways that you can incorporate a model just like this, where you bring somebody up, focus on their problem, and from that group, collectively source a solution and allow that person to think out loud in a safe environment, right? And that usually can be better in turn if it's facilitated. But if you have a safe team, if you have a team that trusts one another, it can be done literally grassroots, right? With this same model. And so take the steps that we had and understand how it could be used for leadership alignment. If you have a team of leaders, and again, leadership alignment, you guys, I've worked in some of the best businesses here in Chicagoland in terms of businesses that are recognized as best places to work. And I can tell you, even the dysfunction within teams can happen at the executive level, right? Where basically everybody's executing on strategy, and they're not even speaking with one another in a real way. Remember how I said real conversations? They're not even speaking through real conversations to make sure, how do I execute on the day-to-day to execute on that strategy? How are you doing that? How do we work together? How can I support you? How can you support me? And how can we have synergy so we have leadership alignment? You can take that even deeper when you think of leadership alignment, redefining the leader. And if everybody in the business is a leader, then you're talking about workforce alignment. And does everybody see the same thing? When you think of leadership development, that's another application this can be brought into your business. Many people are promoting people into positions they're not ready for. And many businesses are going to be forced to have to do this actually on a shorter time frame than they realize, putting people in guiding roles, relationship management roles, where they maybe haven't had the opportunity to develop. Perhaps you have people in your business that are seasoned, right? Maybe this person's on a path to retire in the next 3 to 5 years. What can you do to put this person in a position where they're teaching? And you and I both know they didn't go sign up for work every day to teach, right? Some of them don't have this in their DNA profile. What if you could bring them together where they're actually maybe facilitating a cohort of all the people in the room? Let's say you're all in my business, and I took the 5 people on this side of the room and the 5 people on this side of the room, and I actually said, okay, you guys are going to be leaders that actually lead people in this business. You guys will be in a cohort, and we're going to do this, meet, and have facilitated discussions and real examples that are in the trench that we are facing every single day, so that I can bridge to partner and learn from you, and I can bridge and learn to partner from you, and we can support one another, would that expedite the leadership development of that group? That's one example. Mergers and acquisitions. How many feet of separation is it to have a formidable culture? How many feet? Love Gabriella. Say that again? Love it. How many feet do you think it takes to have a formidable culture in your business that's different from the formidable culture that we say that we have? So let's just say, we say we're an honest, open, collaborative business, and our talent is our greatest asset, right? And that's on the wall. That's on the wall, right? Sorry, I got away from the mic. Let's say you have that culture on this side of the room. But then we decided, you know what? We're collecting logos this year. So we're going to come by you guys over here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our open, trusting, collaborative business. But they come from a business that didn't operate that way. This business never even saw the financial statements. They don't know the performance of their business. All they know is what they're doing in their particular silo of their job, let alone the business. Meanwhile, this business over here publishes financial statements, shares everyone's career development plan on the server so everyone can support one another in their growth. Do you think this team is going to be blending with this team easily? No. What's the first step? Appreciation. Bridging appreciation so that we start communicating. So an application like this crowdsourced coaching model can actually open up communication within merger and acquisition frameworks where you're trying to bring people together in a real conversation to start to meet one another. Hi, I'm Nicole. Dory, it's nice to meet you. Oh, that's what you do, okay. Real conversations. We have to really get to a place of humanist relationship management in our businesses, one person at a time. We really have to get real at work because work is personal. And we've been saying business as usual, business and personal life is separate. But I promise you, if you don't make where work is personal and I meet you and I know you and I care about you and we care about each other, guess what? At the end of the year, I might not work for you anymore. So that's one example that we really need to understand. The other example that I bring up is enhancing team effectiveness, which we started to feel today. Fostering innovation. So how many of us have to come up with an idea every day to solve a problem? Thank you. All of us. Right? Oh, thank you. Right. Wouldn't it be great if you could actually bring people together on a team and trying to foster that innovation, say, here's my problem. What do you think about that? And start whiteboarding it and using it for brainstorming issue and bringing that into the framework where it's a standard part of your culture, where it's a cultural norm. Does that change the environment? Then it's not just lip service, right? Then we actually say, oh yeah, we're going to the innovation meeting on Friday. Are you coming? We're going to solve Gail's problem. Can't wait, right? Does that give you energy? Just the idea of that. It's tremendous. When you think of that, that's going to reinforce your cultural norms. It's going to start being where we live what it is that we practice, what we preach, which is really important. And I think the other area you could use this is for performance management and consulting. I don't know about you guys, but performance management's dead. Many people have performance management in their businesses, but it's not real. It's not the real conversation, right? Some people could just get it done if they said, let's start, let's stop, let's continue. But what if you actually brought it together where we actually gained consensus around the objectives for the quarter, for the 6 months, or for the year? And then we actually got buy-in around how we're going to do this, and we all agree this is the right objectives for this group that we all need to be reaching towards in order to execute on that this quarter or this 6 months, and then getting that framework for performance management. Then you suddenly bridge to the team effectiveness. So these are some various applications in which you can use this in your business. I'm going to let Jay talk about some implementation factors and things you can consider.
So this is the last slide, and then we'll open it up for some discussion before we end. But so let me share a little bit about the model. I've seen it work well in a number of people within the same organization. We will have a cohort of up to 10 people that will meet actually every other week for an agreed upon length of time. It can be 3 months or even longer. And what it can work if they're all in the same office, face-to-face is certainly ideal and better. But today, often many people are quite busy. And what I've found is with a really tight facilitated process, phone works quite well. That we could have gotten with Julie in the same process with calling on people and getting input and getting perspective. Face-to-face certainly is nice, but it's not necessary. I've done crowdsourced coaching groups. I did one group, one leader from Germany, one from Mexico, the rest spread across the United States. I worked with them for quite a long period of time, every other week for an hour. Sometimes it went an hour and a half. And each meeting, we had a different leader do what Julie did. Take center stage, pose an issue or a challenge. I, as the consultant, would give them an opportunity to think in advance with me about the ask of the group, how to hone it, how to hone in, so we maximize the opportunity for value.
Absolutely. And I think that's really great for businesses that are virtual as well, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing is, it certainly helps, and Nicole brought this up earlier, to bring an outside facilitator in, but you can actually use internal facilitators. Yeah. And there are some nuances of the model. I don't think it's a good idea, and Nicole and I were talking before the training, for a boss to run a crowdsourced coaching group because there's too much on the line with employees. But you can actually train employees to do it among themselves and to rotate it if they have the right skills, or you can bring a facilitator in internally. I did a crowdsourced coaching group for a long length of time, this international group, and I'm in discussions. It's a long sales cycle, and I'm not sure if it'll work, but now we're talking about 10 internal facilitators and cascading to 100 leaders in the organization, and me working with those facilitators while those facilitators are working with the leaders in their organization. And then we're also building in a process to be able to actually have those facilitators meet with senior leadership, not to share private confidential information that comes up in those groups, but to talk about trends and issues that are coming up through the whole organization, and we're building that as a very major culture change process.
And I've seen something very similar to this, you know, the concept, right, which is to bring people together. And a lot of people who are heads of their business have opportunities to go to different groups, if you will, that are available. They might be Vistage, might be YPO, things like this, where you have these facilitated peer-to-peer groups. NABO has a wonderful peer-to-peer framework as well. And so what's interesting is that this is a similar approach, but think of it more for your teams and how you can really put it throughout your business to bring about workforce alignment, right? And when we think of it about leaders getting outside their framework, this is where you could also bridge to other businesses and have leaders, let's say you only had 3 in your business, but you knew another business that had 3, that's where you get into cohorts that maybe bridge and learn from each other in terms of high-performing leadership development over a period of a year on a fast track to be high performers in the business to take over leadership roles. That can be bridged to their performance plans.
So a little bit in terms of process. So when I work with a leader, a senior executive who wants to implement this, we'll talk about who's right for the cohort, so that there's not a boss and a direct report, for example, in the same cohort, because that could certainly be problematic. And you want people at a fairly similar level, although there can be value on tiers from a point of view of collaboration and innovation as well. We'll spend an hour on the front end individually with each person just to hear their needs and concerns and to have them feel comfortable with the cohort. Then we'll have a kickoff meeting to have them all warm up to each other. And then we'll start this work on an ongoing basis. I can't tell you, there's 10 books in me of all the things that have come up and the discussions that have been raised and the implementation factors, and I learn quite regularly from each of these cohorts. So without spending too much time lecturing at you, what questions or comments do you have as you heard this model?
Thank you, Dory. Yes, Gabriella?
Okay. Well, it's being recorded, so we need it for the recording as well.
Again, very shy, it's a problem. What are the, as you're going into getting this into action in whatever format it is in each case, what are the 3 main things you run into that you have to overcome to get this to work?
Great question. So what I've found is getting in the trenches of real issues, where I've gotten myself into problems where my OD hat goes on and I think, wow, this is a wonderful opportunity to start to change the culture. And so we're going to get this group all together and think about things that they can implement collectively. It opens up a whole other can of worms. Not that those are wrong things to do, but the group doesn't have the same commitment to work on the cultural issues as they might for their own personal issues. And so it starts to sidetrack the real meat and value in these discussions. So as a facilitator, it's my role to really keep them honed into things that they have control over, that they can do, and that they can work on. The other thing is sometimes people are thinking narrowly. I had one that was thinking that he wanted to bring it internal, and he was thinking the ask of the group was, and this was all from the same company, they knew all these players, so you can imagine the trust and confidentiality that came up, but he said, how do I best ease her out of the organization? And that was his ask, but in the discussion, we ended up identifying 4 or 5 other issues that needed to get on the table. Are there other roles in the organization that she could fulfill? What's his obligation of trying to represent her elsewhere? We talked about the vendor that they were using for 10 years, that he was just thinking that he would announce it a few weeks before he made the change, and it was going to take their business down 30%. Right? And what is their obligation to that other business, and so on. So to really think out of the box and more broadly, not that the person doesn't have the ability to say, well, okay, all that's well and good, I'll think about that, but this is still my immediate concern. That's what's important to that person right now. What we want to do is not just stay narrow. We want to make sure that we think through as broad of impact of these issues as possible, because sometimes it opens up to a door to a much richer decision point. And if you're too quick to get narrow, you miss these broader opportunities.
And that was really the benefit, I think, of the back and forth that you witnessed. If you notice, as we went back and forth between your suggestions and the original question, the question changed. And that is something that we don't allow, I think, in business very often to happen. And so this allows for that. Any other questions?
How are you walking away from this presentation, thinking that this is a useful idea? Maybe not questions, but what are some takeaways as we end our talk today? What are some points of learning for you as you're walking away from this discussion?
I can feel the wheels turning. I do, I really do. Some of you are thinking deeply. Do you want to share?
You know what? I think it's a great process, especially because as owners, as business managers, we want to have relationships with our staff, and sometimes it's too personal or is it not personal enough. This gives a way for everybody to be on the same level and have more of a conversation rather than boss to employee.
And the key is that back and forth as well, and that's why it can become a cultural norm. Did you have any? Over there? Okay.
I think if you let your employees find a solution, even if you think you know the right answer, then they start to own it. So instead of, they saying, what should I do? Instead of getting the answer, saying, well, what do you think we should do?
Right.
And then they're like, oh, my idea? Then I own it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really at the heart of it. The opportunity to be involved in the conversation is key. Absolutely.
Other thoughts?
Wonderful. Did you have one, Julie?
I'm just thinking how I could bring this to the table so that we can kind of do the same thing right away.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great. And I think that's the tremendous opportunity that I was really hoping in partnering with Dr. J to come to speak with all of you today, is that it's very easy for us to say that we're collaborative, but really how collaborative are we every day? And what are we doing to make sure that we're living that? And I do want to remind you, collaboration is one of the top 5 measures of a high-performing organization. It's one of the top 5 measures that will keep people that you want in your business. Heart, mind, right? Both. Because without that, if they don't feel that level of collaboration going on, many people that you want to be in your business may go out and find another opportunity. The talent will pick where it wants to be. And I really do think if you're working as a collaborative leader, you'll be much more effective. So without any further ado, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Dr. J.
Thank you. And I do have some brochures and business cards. If people want to read more about it, you can come up and grab one.
And again, I'm happy to share the study with you about the 5 metrics that are driving financial performance in your business. If you would like that study, I'd be happy to share that with you as well. Thank you all. Enjoy the afternoon.